What's up everybody, Craig here, and I know it's been a bit since I guess released a video talking about tech with just me, but as you can see in the background, I built a custom water loop PC, and it's Windows, and it's got an Intel 10 700K in it. I did start out with a Ryzen 9 3900X, but I had a lot of problems, driver issues and stuff like that, so I switched to Intel. And then there's also a RTX 2080. I'll wait a little bit for these GPU prices to come down. Well, not only come down, become available too, so we'll check that out later. So when I got into this whole custom water loop PC building stuff, obviously you have to learn how to not only assemble it, but drain it as well. So you like to test your system with distilled water first. And I was getting frustrated because I started out with EK Cryo Fuel, which was very good. And then I also moved to Primochill Vue, which I love. Basically, you don't need a flow meter or anything. You can actually see the flow of it. It actually looks really cool. A lot of people were saying that it gunks up your system, but I ran it for 6 months, and then I used that Primochill reboot, ran that through, and then put it in the new fluid in. But I was getting frustrated, and I'll tell you why. When I would test for leaks, there's distilled water all through it, right? And so I go to add the cryo fuel or Primochill Vue, and it gets diluted because I can't get all of that water out. And then when I put coolant, whatever coolant I decide to put in there, it's a little diluted by the distilled water that's already in there to check for leaks. Well, I found a way to easily get out all of the distilled water and then put your coolant in so you have a full undiluted coolant, and especially in the case of Primochill Vue, it looks beautiful. And what I did was I channeled a childhood movie that I love so much, almost Shakespearean like. Have a look.
Good, remarkable. Now commence Operation Vacuum Suck.
So after those scenes from Spaceballs triggered what I should be doing in my brain for as far as draining this thing, I got the wet-vac out. So I'm ready to drain this thing using a wet-vac, but I just want to put a disclaimer out there. Be very careful when you're doing this, because if you don't leave a port or a high point or something, in my case it's a reservoir, I take the top off. If you don't leave something open, you could create negative pressure within your system, mess up some seals, collapse your system if you're not leaving something open for it all to be evacuated and aired out. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there. You'll see what I do and I'll explain it later. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it to see what I'm talking about. All right, so earlier in the video, I talked about a high point and a low point in your system. Well, let's go ahead and call it a beginning and an end point to your system, because remember, we're trying to evacuate the entire contents of the system. So for me, the beginning would be the top of the reservoir there, so I'll be removing the plug at the top of the reservoir. And the end point is going to be the bottom of the tube coming out of the second radiator being the one on the right over there. So basically, if you can kind of envision this right now, we'll be having the vacuum at the bottom of that tube coming out of the second radiator, evacuating all of the contents in the system, and the plug at the top of the reservoir will allow air to come through and allow that evacuation. Okay, so with just the plug at the top of the reservoir removed, we're going to go ahead and drain the contents of the reservoir. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and unbutton the bottom of the tube coming out of the second radiator on the right, which is basically returning the fluid to the reservoir. So we'll go ahead and unbutton that, and then that will allow us to drain a little bit of fluid out of there, and then we'll hook up the vacuum. Like I was saying before, unless you're doing it like the method I'm teaching you here, it's really hard to get the liquid out of the system, especially the radiators. So with me unbuttoning the tube that's returning the flow to the reservoir, just a little bit of liquid comes out and the rest just stays in the radiator. So this bowl was good enough to catch all that fluid, and then I'll hook up the vacuum thereafter. So now that I have that tube free, I'm glad I used a swivel 45-degree angle joint, so as you can see, I can move that tube freely around. I'm gonna go ahead and move that tube out so we can start sucking with the wet-vac. So now I have the wet-vac on it, and disclaimer, remember, I have the plug to the top of the reservoir undone. That way air can go ahead and replace what I'm sucking out so I don't collapse my system. I actually have a pretty beefy wet vac, so this was able to evacuate the contents of my system in like less than a minute. So let's go ahead and see what a good job it did. As you can see, the wet vac did an amazing job. The system is bone dry, and this is exactly what I wanted. Now I can put my undiluted Primochill Vue in the system and we get the full effect. I'm always seeing videos on YouTube telling people how to drain their system. And the thing with that is that the radiator and components are really hard to get the liquid out of. So people are tipping their system, they're moving it in all kinds of crazy ways to get gravity to do its thing, get the liquid out. Less than a minute, this wet vac had this thing evacuated. So that's what I want. So I'm gonna go ahead and button up that tube right there that returns fluid to the reservoir. So I'm gonna go ahead and start filling the reservoir right now, and then slowly pushing fluid into the system, getting those air bubbles out, and start filling the system to its capacity. As you can see, I'm filling the reservoir up, kicking the pump on, pushing fluid into the system, and then as it drains, I'm kicking the pump off because we never want to run our pump dry. It'll damage the pump and mess your system up. Filling the reservoir up, kicking the pump on, it drains a little bit, kick the pump off so it doesn't drain past the pump, and then I keep repeating that process until we push fluid into the system and get out those air bubbles. And look at that right there. How beautiful is that? Look at that Primochill Vue, that full effect. It looks amazing. If you see at the top of the reservoir, it looks kind of foamy. Don't worry, this will go away. I was kind of freaked out too. I was like, what is going on here? I hope this doesn't stay like that. But that foamy stuff kind of goes away. I think it's all the air bubbles churning and makes it all foamy. But it went away, and then I ended up filling the rest of the reservoir up. So as you can see, this Primochill Vue, well, this undiluted Primochill Vue, looks fantastic. A lot of people install these custom aftermarket flow indicators on their system. Basically, you know, if they think their pump's not working, because after you get the air bubbles out, it's hard to see if there's flow. So if they think their pump's not working or something like that, these flow indicators will help them. Well, with Primochill Vue, you don't need that. If you look at the tubes, you can see the flow going through the tubes. If you look at the CPU cooler, it almost looks like a washing machine. It looks fantastic with the flow going in and out of it. And then also the reservoir has got this spiraling effect, so really, really cool looking, and I think it looks great. And the way I was able to do this to get the full effect was to do the draining with a wet vac so that all the distilled water is out, and then I got the full Primochill Vue concentration in there, and then, you know, you get your full effect. So that's all I got for you today. If you liked the video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you love the video, go ahead and hit subscribe. I appreciate everybody for watching. And I got another video coming too, talking about the storage solution I have in here. I got a total of like 11 terabytes. And I do it with a stable bit drive pool, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So that'll be in the next video. Again, thank you for watching.